Hello and welcome to this episode of the ESG Fitness Podcast. You might notice, although you probably won't, but does my voice sound even better? Say even better as if it was good to start with. Oh, why did I choke at that exact moment? I've been voice training, okay? That's what I spend my Saturday nights alone doing now, my vocal training app. So hopefully over the next couple of episodes, you're going to be like, oh, wow, something's different here. And I'm hearing it. So we'll see. Feedback much appreciated. Okay, so today's episode is going to be on the ultimate guide to maintenance. And I get so many questions about this, about maintenance specifically. And then one in particular that I got the other week, which I will read out, made me think, oh, do you know what? I need to do a bit of a deep dive on this. So this is hopefully going to be the ultimate guide to maintenance. I'm going to make it into a Substack as well, which I will probably keep adding to because I'll be like, oh, I missed that, I missed that, I missed that, and I'll just keep adding to it. So we'll put that in, I won't put that in the links because it'll be out after this, but it'll be on my Substack. So I'll put the link to subscribe to my Substack, which you should all do anyway, in the link of the show notes. Okay, so many people find maintenance quite a boring topic, but it shouldn't be because really it's always the end goal. And it's good to remind yourself of that. The reason that so many people yo-yo diet is they are never invested in working out how to maintain their results. Because that side kind of seems boring, like interested in the fat loss or interested in the building muscle or gaining or whatever, but actually just maintaining what you have. And I get it because there is this kind of psychological human trait that we all have. It's like progress is exciting. Staying where you are isn't actually that exciting. Like you always want to be working towards something. And I guess the way to get around that is, okay, so you've achieved your body composition goals that you now want to maintain. Where else in your life can you put that progressive type energy need so that you're not just obsessing over your body? And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. Especially those, like, because normally what happens at the end of a diet is you fall into one of two traps. One, you over obsess about everything and you try to be perfect at maintenance. And then you get kind of like orthorexic type tendencies where you're worried about specific meal timings or eating out once a week, or, people get quite obsessive with this. Or other end of the spectrum, people get bored and they just revert back to the behaviors that they were doing before. And then inevitably, they just end up in the body that they were before because your body is a byproduct of the behaviors that you are consistently taking. So that's why we're going to do things a little bit different. And like I said, most people can do the fat loss, but when they finish, they either immediately start to gradually revert back to old behaviors, which inevitably leads to weight regain and thus yo-yo dieting. And then they find themselves kind of quickly ready to sign up for another diet. But not this time, my friend. But not this time. I've potentially had too much time alone, so sorry if I'm slightly strange in this podcast, but I think it's a really important one. So this was the question that I got. Hi, I have a question about maintenance after dieting. I'm close to my target after a steady weight loss period. However, I'm confused by what to do when I reach my goal. There's lots of information about there's lots of information out there about how to approach fat/weight loss, but not what to do after. Well, there is now. Is it better to slowly add back calories incrementally or to immediately go to an estimated maintenance? I had a look at your podcast, but couldn't easily find the information, so apologies. I did try the self-service route. Thank you very much for that, because a lot of the time people have questions. I'm like, there are lots of podcasts on this, and there are also lots of Substacks on it. But this is part of the reason I was like, oh, I need to do one, because I don't know if I've ever done one solely on this. So here we are. She also says, by the way, I've followed you for years and you always speak sense, always seem to want to be. Oh, wait, sorry, that's not the right word. Everyone seems to want to be a coach pumping out the same diet by numbers information. So it's refreshing to read straight common answers amongst the bullshit. You're very welcome. Okay, right. So, firstly, your maintenance calories will generally be lower after a diet. There are a couple of reasons for this. Number one, you've lost weight, so you will have a reduction in your basal metabolic rate. This is part of successful weight loss. You cannot avoid it. And if you lose a lot of weight, then you now have less total mass, and thus you require less calories to maintain that total mass. A lot of people kind of fearmonger around this, like, oh, if you diet, then your metabolism will reduce, and so you just need less calories. And this statement is true, but it lacks any context or understanding. Like, yes, that's the fact that when you're a smaller person, you need less calories to maintain your weight. That's not a problem. And that's just a byproduct of losing weight, an unavoidable byproduct. Heavier people have higher calorie needs at rest. And if you want to lose weight, then your resting calorie needs will reduce. End of, that's it. Or you decide, I want to stay with higher calorie expenditure, but I want to stay overweight. Like, those are your two options, nothing in between. Now, this isn't a problem because they only marginally reduce. And this is what nobody asks. It's like, oh, okay, so that statement's true. Like, if you diet, then your metabolism will reduce and you'll need less calories. Okay, cool. How many less calories? Because it's not like it's going to take up your whole deficit, right? Or it's not like it's like a life-changing amount less. And it will be in proportion to the amount of weight that you lose, right? So if you're someone who weighs 150 kilograms and you come down to only weighing 70 kilograms, like you're going to have quite a big reduction. If you're someone who loses 5 kilograms, there's not going to be such a reduction. The other component of this is the percentage of lean mass that you will have will play a small role. So usually less than what most people think. 1 kilogram of muscle, which by the way, it's actually quite a lot of muscle, will require about 10 to 15 calories a day. Now, some people used to claim 50 calories a day. I don't really know where that number ever came from, but unfortunately, it's not. And if you've ever tried to build a kilogram of muscle and you're not brand new to resistance training, like it's hard, really hard. So it's not like you can just be like, oh, do you know what I'll do? I'll just build loads and loads and loads of muscle and then I'll have higher calorie needs. Like I would aim for that, but have like realistic expectations of that. Okay, second reason that calories will generally be slightly lower after a diet, or your maintenance calorie needs will be slightly lower after a diet. By the way, this isn't lower than your dieting calories. This is lower than your initial maintenance calories. Just remember that. Because some people use the line of like, oh, well, you know, if you can't stick to it now, like you should always do something you can stick to forever. I'm like, well, you're not going to be in a deficit forever, so you're never going to have to stick to these calories forever, right? It's just that your previous maintenance was probably slightly higher than it will be if you've lost a significant amount of weight while dieting. So the second reason for that is something called adaptive thermogenesis. People who have lost a significant amount of weight often have a slightly lower basal metabolic rate than we would expect given their weight and their body composition. So as an example, if two people weighed 75 kilograms, but one used to weigh 150 kilograms and has dieted down, I mean, that's quite an extreme, but let's say 100 kilograms and dieted down, they might have a slightly lower basal metabolic rate than someone who's always weighed around 75 kilograms. This is because you become a little bit more efficient with the weight loss process. And from the research, it looks like that difference, and I think this was with about 10 kilograms of weight loss. It might have even been more than that, actually. Don't quote me on that part. But anyway, the difference was about 72 calories a day. So it's not a huge difference, right? It's not like some people refer to this as like metabolic damage and it's the reason that even on 1200 calories you can't lose weight. Like no, that's not what's happening here. There might be a slight reduction, but probably not really something that you need to worry about. Number 3 is the reduction in non-exercise activity thermogenesis, also known as NEAT, also known as just like how much you spontaneously move throughout the day. So most people will move less when they reduce their calorie intake. And this can be easily monitored now because most people have like step trackers or Fitbits or like a watch or something that's tracking how many steps they do. The other thing to be aware of is that the 100 kilogram version of you who did 10,000 steps will obviously expend more calories doing those 10,000 steps than the 75 kilogram version of you because you're carrying around less excess weight. So for these reasons, if you bring your calories up to pre-dieting maintenance, it will likely mean that you're in a slight calorie surplus after your diet, and then you'll start to slightly regain the weight that you've lost. So, given all these things, how would I help someone find out their maintenance calorie needs? Now, I do recommend increasing relatively slowly. I'm going to explain exactly what I mean here. But it's not because you're going to slowly train your body to maintain on more and more and more calories and magically reverse diet up to, some people are claiming you can reverse diet up to like 3,000 calories as a woman, and this is what they eat, and they're not gaining weight. And usually a couple of things are happening. Either they're lying and they're not eating that much, or they're lying because they eat that much like 2 days a week and then they don't eat that much on other days, or they have been doing that they've only been doing it for a week and they are gaining weight, they just haven't really noticed yet, or they are very active, right? So there's really no like secrets around calorie maintenance needs. If you are consuming 3,000 calories a day and genuinely maintaining your weight, that means that you're expending 3,000 calories a day. Like, there's no other way around that, right? It's just basic maths. So, how are you doing that? Now, often these people are personal trainers. They may be doing like 25,000 steps a day and walking around doing PT sessions. And then they do a high rock session before work and a weight session after work. And they're like, yeah, it's easy. This is just what I do. And they're maybe like 5'11", weigh 75 kilograms of sheer muscle. And then you're looking at someone reading that who's sedentary, got 2 kids, makes it to the gym when she's really trying, like 3 times a week, tries to get those 10,000 steps in, somewhere between 8 and 10,000, but mostly like sitting down. She's 5'2". Like, her needs are completely different. And it seems like such an obvious statement to make, but everyone's calorie needs are different. And it is based on the amount of energy that you expend based on how you live your life. So don't look at somebody else, especially not like Instagram fitness professionals who are probably doing a ton more activity than you are, and then think, oh yeah, oh, she looks absolutely shredded. I'll just eat what she's eating. It's like, no, no, no. You eat what she's eating, not expending the same amount she is, you're going to put on weight. So bear in mind where you are, and this is where like individual coaching is so important. So anyway, the reason that wouldn't even say slowly, but like I take a slightly more cautious approach to increasing calories is more psychological than it is physiological. So I like to err on the side of caution because most people will overeat as opposed to undereat, right? Most people think that they're tracking, I don't know, 1,600 calories, but it's actually closer to 1,800 calories. But I know that that's still a deficit for them, so it's not a big deal, right? We kind of doing the same with maintenance. Most people will estimate things and it will be slightly more than what they think. So I always kind of err on the side of caution. And most women, especially women who have really struggled with fat loss and they've worked really hard to reduce their weight, like they freak out a little bit when the scales bump up. So I am going to talk about like realistic expectations as well. The other point on this is that you will probably experience a slight increase in energy expenditure as you come out of a calorie deficit due to spontaneous activity. So, for example, an increase in non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which would be the spontaneous activity side of that, or even just like having more energy to lift heavier in the gym. Sometimes you'll notice stuff like if you're in quite a deep deficit and you've got a bit of like diet fatigue towards the end of your diet, you'll notice that maybe you would have previously like walked to the next bus stop if the bus was going to be 5 minutes, but now you're like, oh, I think I'll just sit here. Now, you don't really consciously notice those things, but over time, like little things like that start to add up. So when you come out of a deficit, those behaviors tend to flip backwards towards like being a little bit more active and having a bit more energy, and that adds up throughout the day. Even things like fidgeting. People tend to fidget less when they're on lower calories or they're in a bit of a deficit. And then when they come back up and they're fueling themselves a bit more, they tend to start moving around a little bit, fidgeting, generally moving more. The other very small aspect, which I'll just mention here, only just to like tick all the boxes, is the thermic effect of food. So when you eat more food, you will have a higher thermic effect of food. This tends to be a percentage of your total calories consumed. So that would slightly increase your energy expenditure as well, but obviously you'd be eating more, so kind of accounts for that. So here is my approach for like most people. Now I might change this slightly for certain individuals, but this is quite like a good general approach to take. So what I do is I increase to about 100 calories less than what I would predict their maintenance calories to be. Then I will monitor and adapt as needed. Because remember that maintenance is not a static number. It is technically different probably every single day because you will burn slightly more or less due to your activity levels, your menstrual cycle, the thermic effect of food, like the food choices you've made. Protein has a higher thermic effect than, say, fat does. The temperature outside. Even if you look at the seasons, like, and just one impact here would be step count. So my step count has significantly reduced now that it's cold outside, it's winter, it gets dark at like 4 p.m. I'm not going to go out for a walk on my own around London in the dark. Like, so my step count is significantly lower. So thus my maintenance calorie needs in the winter are actually quite a lot lower than in the summer because I'm so much more active in the summer. So things like that, like, do remember, because I think sometimes the way that people talk about maintenance is if it's like this, like, oh, my maintenance needs are exactly 2,100 calories, as if that's not actually just like a kind of ballpark figure. Your maintenance needs based on the way that you're living your life at the moment and the season that we're in and how much you're traveling and what you've got going on at work and how old your kids are and like, because all these things have impacts on how much activity levels you're doing. There is certainly, and I want to emphasize this, no need to slowly creep up your calories by like 50 calories a week, like adding on 50 calories a day for a week or something. Like, there's absolutely no need to be doing that. Some people even do that kind of weekly, like, right, we'll go from 1,500 to 1,550, and then we'll go to 1,600 the week after, and then we'll go to 1,650 the week after that. It's like you're actually just prolonging your deficit. So if you're done with fat loss, and let's say 1,500 calories is giving you a 500 calorie deficit and you're just slowly increasing, like, you're still in a deficit, you'll still be losing fat. And if you're done with it, why still be in a deficit, right? Why prolong that longer than you need to? If you are working with a coach, they should be able to predict your maintenance calories. That's what I do for my clients, based on things like your current weight, your average calorie intake. And honestly, one of the big things I look at is the rate at which you are losing weight. So if I know you're on 1,500 calories and you're consistently losing a pound a week, I know that you're roughly in a 500 calorie deficit. Okay, cool. So what do I need to do? I'll probably increase you to 1,800 to 1,900-ish for a couple of weeks, see what your weight does, see where you are, and then maybe bump you up again. If you are not working with a coach, you should be, and you can go over to esgfitness.co.uk, fill in the application form, and I will email you. If that's not an option for you, you can use a total daily energy expenditure calculator. Just bear in mind, all of these are estimates, and that's okay. But you basically, what you need to do is take the sensible estimate, live it, breathe it, be consistent with it, and then adapt based on what actually happens in real life. Like, that's really the only way to be doing it. Just to touch on before I wrap this up, realistic expectations at maintenance are very important because some people freak out and they think that they're doing it wrong just because their weight increases slightly. And then what happens is they get in this kind of yo-yo of like, oh, I think I'm done dieting, but I need to stay in this deficit. And then they think that their maintenance needs are their dieting needs, and they get all free. And actually what's happening is they're trying to over restrict to stay to their dieting calories, but they don't really want to diet anymore. So then they'll overeat at certain times, and then they still think in their head, but I'm sticking to 1,500. This is so restrictive. And then they end up binging. And anyway, that's often what happens if you don't understand this and you don't get it right. So realistic expectation, your weight will increase. That's not body fat. That is food volume, more glycogen stores in your muscle. Like, it is completely normal that when you eat more and when you start to fuel yourself a bit more, your weight will increase. Now, that is, like I said, not an increase in body fat. The second thing you need to realize, your weight will still fluctuate. Your weight will fluctuate at maintenance, in a deficit, when you're gaining weight, forevermore. Your weight will fluctuate. That is normal. It is inevitable. You cannot avoid it. So don't freak out because the scales are like 1 pound up one day and 1 pound down one day. And like, the fluctuation will still happen, much like it did when you were losing weight. And it will happen more if you're a woman, and it will happen more and less predictably if you're a perimenopausal woman. So you have to accept that weight fluctuations will happen. And then just to remind you, maintenance is the most important part of dieting, and it's the part that most people ignore. and it's why I've just done a full episode on it. Losing fat is cool, but like everybody's done that. Everyone. Like everyone can lose fat. If you can maintain that fat loss, that's what's impressive. It doesn't, when someone's like, oh, this person lost 10 pounds in 8 weeks or whatever, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. What about if we come back in 6 months? Have they still lost that 10 pounds? Then I'm impressed. But anyone can lose fat. And you probably all have, but it's whether you can maintain it. And that's where the focus really needs to be. So if you want to maintain your results, you need to maintain the behaviors that helped you achieve those results. And if you need help with any of this, or if you want to make your next diet be the last diet that you ever do, that's exactly why I built Commit to 6. Head over to esgfitness.co.uk/commit. We have an intake starting on next Monday. I'm so excited for it. Like, I've added in quite a lot of extra things I think are really going to help people, have a huge impact on people. And this is the best Commit 6 I've ever done. So that's exciting in itself. And I also love running them in December because you just attract the most fuck average people, which is exactly my vibe. So I feel like, do you know what? I don't want an average life. I don't want to be the average person. I want more than that. I want more from my life. This is for you.